kidding, that's what real YouTubers say. Hey everyone, I'm Sarah, and it is my distinct pleasure to welcome you to this video. So my friend Megan, who is known here on YouTube as the Front Butt YouTuber, created an IBD tag. She tagged me in her IBD tag, and so this is me doing her IBD tag, and then I'm gonna tag some of you guys. That's pretty much what we're doing. Question number 1. What form of IBD do you have? Thank you for asking. I have Crohn's disease, but fun little fact right here, most people think of IBD, by the way that stands for inflammatory bowel disease, as being A or B, either black or white. Crohn's or colitis. Sort of true. It's not as simple as that. It's not just A or B. It's not black and white. In fact, there are many types of IBD, hundreds even. You see, IBD is complicated. It's non-binary and it hates when you refer to it as that. For instance, listen to this, it's great. All the people who have Crohn's disease have a different kind of Crohn's disease than the other person. And all the people who have ulcerative colitis have their own unique kind of ulcerative colitis. So my Crohn's disease is mine. I have my own genes. I grew up in my own environment. I was exposed to different environmental triggers, and I have my own microbiome, and it turns out all of that goes into a person's IBD or a person getting IBD. In fact, over 200 genes and counting have been discovered that are linked to IBD. The first gene that was discovered, NOD2, was discovered near 20 years ago, and now we know of 200 genes that are linked to IBD. I say we like I'm a doctor or I have anything to do with it. I don't. Now, does it mean that if you have those genes, you're gonna get IBD? Not necessarily. Studies of identical twins have shown us that it's more than just genetics, right? So, identical twins, you'd think that if one twin has IBD, then the other one would have near, 100% chance of developing IBD? But nope. While having a relative with IBD is a risk factor, it's not everything. The highest genetic risk of developing IBD is if both parents have IBD. Moment of silence to apologize to mine and Dan's future children. Some people, many patients even, think that genetics play a bigger role than we know they do right now. In fact, more patients with IBD don't have a relative with IBD than those that do. All this is not to say that genetics don't play a role. So I have Crohn's disease. Crohn's disease that looks different from everybody else's Crohn's disease. What a special snowflake I am. It's helpful to envision IBD on a spectrum. So let's look at this spectrum. On one side, we have ulcerative colitis. We'll label UC. On the opposite side, we have Crohn's disease. We'll label Crohn's disease. Now in the middle here, we'll add a gray area, and it's hard to distinguish between the two at the time. Perhaps disease is showing up in the colon, and it certainly has characteristics that look like ulcerative colitis, but some things are looking like, this could actually be Crohn's disease. It then gets labeled as IBD unclassified, otherwise known as indeterminate colitis. So we'll just add like a little gray area here. So we have our spectrum started. Certainly, there are differences between ulcerative colitis and Crohn's disease, and it's important to understand your unique inflammatory bowel disease. But it's important to understand IBD on a deeper level than this, because more understanding, the more patients are educated about their inflammatory bowel disease, it leads to better outcomes, which is a good thing. So let's talk about what makes everybody's IBD so unique, right? There should only be 3 groups here. There should be people with ulcerative colitis, that they all just have ulcerative colitis. What's the difference? There's people with Crohn's disease. They all have Crohn's disease. What's the difference? Let's look at this Crohn's disease side. The millions of people worldwide living with Crohn's disease. Some people with Crohn's disease have a stricturing type of Crohn's disease, where their bowel gets narrow in portions because of scar tissue. By the way, there's no scientific order of where I am placing things. This spectrum is just used to illustrate the complexities of inflammatory bowel disease, but don't think too hard about where I'm placing stuff. Some people with Crohn's disease have a penetrating type of Crohn's disease. They get fistulas. Put them here because why not? Other people with Crohn's disease may never have a stricture or a fistula in their life, but their inflammatory bowel disease may only present inflammatory. We'll put them here. Some people with Crohn's disease may have mild Crohn's disease that never progresses. Put them here. Some people may have Crohn's disease very severe and they may struggle with controlling it. We'll put them here. Some patients might respond really well to surgery, and after surgery, they might do well for a really, really long time. Some people with Crohn's disease only have Crohn's disease in their ileum and the first part of their colon. Put them here, why not? Some people might have Crohn's that's only located in their colon, known as Crohn's colitis. Put them there, why the fuck not? Some people might have Crohn's in their upper digestive system, maybe their duodenum or their stomach, who the hell knows, put them there. Some patients will have perianal disease and they'll struggle with abscesses and fistulas, and we'll put them there. And some patients may never have perianal disease. Thank God for them. See where we're going here? Complicated. Add in all their genetics, the environment, their environmental triggers. Each one of them has their own unique microbiome. Look at all these patients. IBD is complicated, y'all. But here's something fun. Let's talk about subsets. Let's say that there's a group of Crohn's patients with a certain gene or combination of genes, or a group of patients that have Crohn's that looks like this. Whatever it may be. Over my head, because I'm not a doctor. Subsets of patients that we find out, and by we, I mean I have nothing to do with this, but we find out that this subset of patients is more likely to respond to a certain medication. If patients could go on a medication knowing that it's probably going to be the most effective treatment for them without having to try a whole bunch of other things beforehand, that may not work as effectively. So if you can envision IBD like this, not just A and B, not just black and white, but on a spectrum, a whole bunch of kinds of inflammatory bowel disease, you are one step closer to understanding IBD. Congratulations! Next question. Why is IBD advocacy important? Let's take a look. Advocacy is important because 1. It leads to education and support programs for patients. Camp Oasis, a summer camp for kids who have IBD. Advocacy is important because of personal reasons. Now these are reasons that are personal to the patient. Maybe it's just getting your family, your friends, your loved ones to understand you better so they can stop telling you to just eat that diet, take more walks, and just think positively and you'll be cured. 3, it leads to the protection of patients in schools and at work. IBD advocacy is important because number 4, it leads to better outcomes. The more a patient understands about inflammatory bowel disease, they are likely to do better. It's true, there's been studies. And advocacy is important because number 5, money. By telling our stories, that shows others why they should invest in the lives of IBD patients, why they should care to donate to our cause. So let's pour out our hearts so people will pour out their pockets. Money leads to those patient support programs that help patients build community and handle their IBD better, but it also leads to research, and research leads to better and more effective treatments, and one day getting cures. Did she just say cures? I did say cures. Thank you for listening closely. I'll talk about that in a future video sometime. Describe a socially awkward moment with IBD. I got one. This one takes place in elementary school. I had already at this point been in and out of the hospital ever since I was a baby, having accidents a lot. This is how it got socially awkward. So say I'm walking with people and we're walking down the hall in school, and the bathroom's like, it's not far. But when you have IBD, it's far. So let's just say it's right at the end of the hall. All you would have to do is walk to the end of the hall. Sure, it sounds easy, right? Not when you have IBD, no. I'm walking around in my neighborhood with kids and my house is only like 1 block away. Simple, right? No. So what would happen is I would get to the point where I know. So you know it's coming, so you try to do the butt clenching thing, the butt cheek cleansing. You're walking, you're trying to squeeze everything. It's not gonna work. You just know it's not gonna work. Meanwhile, you're trying to hold a conversation, keep a straight face, and like act like nothing's going on, but you're yeah, it's coming. And you start sweating and panicking, which only is gonna make it worse. But you get to the point where you know that there's no hope, there's nothing that is gonna help you, there's nothing that's gonna save you right now, but maybe, just maybe, if you drop to the ground. I do this a lot. If I was about to have an accident, I would drop to the ground just wherever I was. Use humor to make it look like it was supposed to happen. So I would crack a joke, or I don't know, look at silly Sarah, she was just doing something stupid again. But that was all that I had. That was my social awkwardness, is just like dropping to the ground, trying to hold everything in, and then trying to tell jokes or do something stupid and silly so that I can somehow get out of this situation and make it look like that was supposed to happen. And then, you know, when you think everything's in control, yeah, Yeah, okay, I think I can hold it for get down to the bathroom, hopefully. Next question. What is a common stigma you run into? I'm so glad you asked about stigma. Did you know that stigmatization of illness leads to poorer outcomes? I'm breaking out the notes. This is when you know it's serious. A paper titled A Systematic Review of Disease-Related Stigmatization in Patients Living with Inflammatory Bowel Disease was written by Dr. Lori Kiefer and Dr. Tiffany Taft. Never heard of them. It was published in Clinical and Experimental Gastroenterology in 2016. I'll link this study below, but you do have to pay for it unless you can find other ways to get it. In this study, 3 types of stigma was mentioned: internalized stigma, perceived stigma, and enacted stigma. It highlights how several persons living with IBD have concerns about how others see them. Also, feeling different than others, feeling shame, and feeling discredited, even by medical professionals. But some of that could be perceived stigma, and so it's a perception but may not actually be happening, which is good news. That's encouraging. So maybe us as patients are feeling more stigma than actually exists. Now, let's talk about internalized stigma, because this one, as I was reading it, gave me the most concern for my fellow patients. So, internalized stigma or self-stigma is when patients apply negative attitudes or stereotypes to themselves rather than rejecting them as false. And this kind of stigma may be related to the poorest outcomes. Internalized stigma, or the incorporation of stigmatizing beliefs and attitudes into one's sense of self, is potentially the most detrimental to IBD outcomes because it results in declines across physical and psychological functioning more than perceived stigma. One of the reasons that this paper highlights that internalized stigma can be dangerous is because IBD requires substantial self-management to maintain remission, to adhere to your medications, disease surveillance protocols like getting your colonoscopies and other things to monitor your disease activity, vaccinations, other health guidelines, and so this stigma could potentially interfere with self-care, and that's no bueno. So what I want people living with IBD to know, and even those that don't have IBD, is that no kind of stigma is a good kind of stigma. As patients, we need to work on this ourselves. So if we're experiencing perceived or internalized stigma, there are things we can do to help. Hopefully, our doctors are monitoring us for this kind of stigma and referring us out for professional help if needed. And that brings us to the last question: what do you want others to know about IBD? I want them to know so much stuff about IBD, but we're out of time. The good news is I have a website full of lots of information about IBD. I'll link down below. Also check out the other people who do this IBD advocacy tag and learn from them too. Thank you to Meg Johnson for tagging me and creating this IBD advocacy tag. Her information will also be down in the description box down below. If you liked it, be sure to like, subscribe, pray, send hopes, send dreams, some light, some love, and gifts, some presents. Do all the things that real YouTubers tell you to do. It's not a threat, but maybe it is. Bye!